When Rachel Harper heard the dragging sound outside her small cabin, she assumed it was just the wind, or maybe an old deer caught in the brush. The morning fog hung thick over the forest, and the only thing visible from her window were the tall pines and the path leading through the woods. But something about the noise was different today, more deliberate. Rachel moved toward the window, her heartbeat quickening, trying to make sense of the strange noise cutting through the morning stillness. The air outside felt oddly still, and when she peered out, she could hardly believe her eyes. A massive, tawny figure was dragging something across the ground. At first, she thought it was a fallen tree or debris, but as the figure came closer, her blood ran cold. It wasn't just a log or branches, it was a bear, a large grizzly, its fur matted with dirt, dragging an old, torn canvas bag. Rachel's breath caught in her throat. She couldn't understand why the bear was dragging the bag. It wasn't hunting or scavenging. This wasn't a typical sight, especially not this early in the morning. With the bear nearing her porch, Rachel's first instinct was to run inside and lock the door, but something stopped her, something in the way the bear moved. Its exhaustion, its care pulled at her heart. The bear paused at the edge of the porch, and for a moment, it simply stood there staring at Rachel, its eyes wary yet strangely calm. A deep rumble echoed in the bear's chest, not a growl but a low sound, almost as if it were trying to communicate. The bag it dragged fell with a soft thud as it gently released its hold. The bear backed away and sat down on the dirt path, its gaze never leaving Rachel. She stood frozen in place, her mind racing. It wasn't just any bear. The grizzly had been dragging something, and that something wasn't just debris, it was alive. Rachel's hands trembled as she slowly opened the door, the screen door creaking as she stepped out onto the porch. The grizzly didn't move. She was close now, close enough to see that the bag was torn and dirty, heavy with what looked like dirt and twigs, but something shifted inside it, something alive. Rachel hesitated, her eyes scanning the woods around her, but the bear sat still. She stepped forward, cautiously, as if she were walking through a dream. She wasn't sure what was happening, but the bear's presence felt less threatening than it should have. She could feel it, a strange understanding between them. As Rachel got within a few feet of the bag, she heard the softest of whimpers. It was small, almost imperceptible. Her heart raced, but she couldn't turn away. She knelt down, and the closer she got, the more she realized that the bag wasn't just a bag. It was a cradle for something fragile, something small. Her breath hitched as she slowly pulled the canvas open, revealing the source of the noise. There, curled inside the torn fabric, was a tiny bear cub, no bigger than a loaf of bread. Its fur was matted with dirt, its tiny paws trembling, barely able to lift itself. Its eyes were closed, crusted with dried mud. The cub made no sound, its chest rising and falling weakly. Rachel's heart shattered in that moment, and she nearly collapsed beside the cub. The mother grizzly didn't move, still sitting in the shadows, watching Rachel with those deep, knowing eyes. Rachel looked up at the mother bear, and for the first time she understood. This wasn't a random encounter, this was a plea. The grizzly wasn't there to fight, she wasn't there to hurt. She had brought her cub to Rachel, asking for help. Rachel didn't know what to do. She knelt beside the tiny bear cub, its frail body so small and vulnerable. The mother grizzly watched from a distance, still and silent, almost as if waiting for Rachel's next move. Rachel's heart pounded in her chest as she examined the cub more closely. Its small body trembled, barely able to lift its head. The fur was caked with dirt, and the cub's breathing came in shallow gasps, struggling against exhaustion and fear. She reached out slowly, careful not to make any sudden movements. Her hands were shaking, but she managed to gently stroke the cub's back with the tips of her fingers. It was warm but feeble. She could see the tiny bruises on its sides, the cuts on its paws, and the desperate signs of distress. It was clear that the cub had been through hell, abandoned, perhaps left for dead. But somehow, against all odds, it had survived. Rachel didn't know why the mother had chosen her. She didn't have the experience or the training to help an injured animal, let alone a wild grizzly cub. But in that moment, something inside her stirred, an instinct, a powerful urge to protect this tiny creature. She glanced back at the mother bear, who remained motionless, still watching. Rachel couldn't explain it, but she knew that this bear, this mother, was trusting her with her most precious possession. It was a responsibility she wasn't prepared for, but one she couldn't ignore. "I'm going to help you," Rachel whispered softly, her voice trembling as she gathered the cub into her arms, cradling it as gently as she could. The mother bear didn't growl or charge, didn't seem threatened at all. Instead, she simply observed, her gaze unwavering. Rachel carried the cub inside, her mind racing. What should she do first? She had no veterinary skills, no knowledge of animal care beyond what she had learned from books and documentaries. She placed the cub on the floor of the cabin, covering it with a warm towel she had found in the small linen closet. The cub's breathing was shallow, its tiny body trembling as it lay there. Rachel quickly fetched a bowl of water and a bit of fruit, hoping to offer something to help the cub regain strength. As she moved about, Rachel couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. Every time she turned, she half expected to see the mother bear standing at the window or just outside the door, keeping a vigil. But each time the cabin was empty, save for the cub. The hours stretched on, and Rachel did everything she could to comfort the cub. She kept it warm, gave it water, and tried to offer soft words of reassurance. But the little bear barely reacted. It was exhausted, physically broken, and emotionally spent. Rachel knew the cub was too weak to move, but she also knew that if it didn't get proper care soon, it wouldn't survive much longer. By evening, as the sun began to set behind the mountains, Rachel noticed something strange. The air outside had become still again, and although the cabin was silent, Rachel felt a presence. She stepped outside, looking around cautiously, but there was nothing to be seen. She stepped back inside, closing the door behind her, but something in the back of her mind told her the mother bear hadn't gone far. She had left the cub in Rachel's care for a reason, because she trusted her to do what she couldn't. She had taken the cub as far as she could, and now it was up to Rachel to ensure the cub's survival. The weight of the responsibility settled over her, heavy and unyielding. Rachel sat down beside the cub, her heart full of conflicting emotions. She felt fear, doubt, and uncertainty, but also a deep sense of responsibility. She wasn't just caring for an injured animal. She was standing in the place of a mother who had already sacrificed so much to keep her cub alive. And in that moment, Rachel knew she couldn't turn back. Whatever happened next, she was in this for the long haul. There was no going back, no turning away from the trust the mother bear had placed in her. She was now part of something bigger, something wild and untamed. The night passed slowly, and Rachel stayed awake, watching over the cub as it slept fitfully. Every now and then, the cub would stir, but it didn't wake. It was clear that it was in pain, but Rachel could see small signs of progress. Its breathing was slightly steadier, and its little body didn't tremble as much. As the hours passed, Rachel thought about the mother bear. Had she gone off to hunt, to find food for her cub? Or was she somewhere out in the woods, watching over them? Rachel's mind raced, imagining the struggles the mother bear had endured to bring her cub here. The more she thought about it, the more she realized just how much the bear had risked by leaving her cub in the care of a stranger. But one thing was clear: this wasn't just about survival, it was about trust, and Rachel had been chosen for a reason. The days that followed felt like a blur to Rachel. Every morning, she woke up to the soft, almost imperceptible sound of the cub's breathing. It had stopped shaking so violently, and although it was still weak, it was slowly beginning to regain strength. She fed it as much as she could, even attempting to offer some small bits of meat she had from her own stash, though the cub seemed uninterested. Water and fruit were enough for now, but Rachel knew that it needed something more substantial to truly recover. Yet, for all the care she was providing, Rachel could feel the pull of the unknown. The mother bear had not returned. The woods outside had been eerily quiet, but Rachel knew that the forest was always watching. The feeling of being observed never left her, and every time she stepped outside, it was as if she could sense the presence of the bear nearby, just beyond the trees. Sometimes she thought she heard rustling in the underbrush, or saw a dark shadow flitting between the trunks, but each time she turned, there was nothing. One afternoon, as Rachel sat by the fire, keeping a watchful eye on the cub, something made her pause. The cub had started to shift around more, its little eyes opening wider, scanning its new surroundings. The air in the cabin felt heavier than usual, and the tension was thick. The cub suddenly let out a small whimper and began to scramble toward the door, but Rachel wasn't ready for what happened next. She jumped to her feet, her heart racing as the door rattled under the weight of something powerful pushing against it. The knob turned, and for a moment, the entire cabin seemed to hold its breath. Rachel froze. A moment later, a low rumble echoed from outside, the unmistakable sound of a bear. Her heart nearly stopped. The door crashed open with a violent force, and Rachel didn't even have time to react. Standing in the doorway, her massive silhouette framed against the twilight sky, was the mother grizzly. Her fur was still matted with dirt and ice, her eyes blazing with something that Rachel couldn't quite interpret. But it wasn't anger, it wasn't aggression, it was gratitude. The bear looked at Rachel for a long moment, her gaze locked onto the woman who had taken her cub in. Then slowly, the bear stepped inside, her large paws making heavy thuds against the wooden floor. Rachel took a step back, her pulse quickening, unsure whether to run or stay. But the mother didn't approach her. Instead, she lowered her massive head, eyeing the cub, who had frozen in place. The little bear let out a soft squeak, its tiny body shaking. The mother bear's gaze never left the cub. She took one careful step forward, lowering herself until she was eye level with her son. Rachel watched, transfixed, as the bear nuzzled her cub gently with her massive snout. The cub didn't pull away. It wasn't scared. In that moment, Rachel saw something she had never expected to see, a bond so deep, so unspoken, that it transcended words. The mother bear's actions weren't just an expression of affection, they were a quiet communication, an acknowledgement that her cub was safe, that Rachel had done what she had trusted her to do. The cub, slowly and carefully, took a few tentative steps toward its mother. There was no hesitation now. The little bear sniffed the air, then touched his mother's nose with his tiny paw, and the two of them shared a moment of peace. Rachel's chest tightened with emotion. She had never seen anything so pure, so powerful, as this simple interaction. And for the first time, she realized that the mother had never truly left. She had been watching. She had been waiting. With a slow, deliberate motion, the mother Grizzly lifted her head, her eyes now meeting Rachel's. It was a look of understanding, of quiet appreciation. The bear didn't need to say anything. She didn't need to growl or make a sound. The way she looked at Rachel was enough. It was a thank you, a moment of silent recognition that Rachel had done something extraordinary. But then, just as quietly as she had entered, the mother bear turned and stepped back out through the door. The wind outside stirred, and Rachel felt the temperature drop as she watched the bear disappear into the trees. So the cub stood for a moment, watching its mother, but soon it turned back to Rachel, its tiny body still unsteady, but with an unmistakable strength in its gaze. For the first time, Rachel understood. The mother had chosen her not because she was the only one who could help, but because she was the one who would do it without hesitation, without question. And now the cub, stronger and more confident than before, had accepted his new reality. He wasn't alone anymore. As Rachel stood there, the weight of the moment pressed upon her. The mother bear had left, and with it, a deep, unspoken bond was formed. But as she looked down at the cub, stronger now, and full of life, Rachel knew her journey was far from over. What would you do in Rachel's shoes? Would you have stepped in to help the cub, knowing the risks? Or would you have hesitated, unsure of what the consequences might be? Let us know in the comments below what you would have done. Have you ever experienced a moment where you had to step up in a way you didn't expect? If you like this story, please subscribe our channel to watch like these heartwarming stories and share your thoughts and stories with other people.